Hello everyone, it's Thumper the Rabid. This month's wipe on our PVE server, that's the Rusty Haven PVE, where I often play with some of my build friends here. I have created a new electricity project that is a Minicopter racing course. It takes advantage of both electricity and some of the RF components. I'm going to give you a brief overview of how this works, then I'll take you into the details of how it's all wired up. What you have here is a course with a landing pad here to start and finish on, where all the logical controls are located inside this building with the gallery. There's a timer on the wall outside to show you your time. All the triggering happens in the 10 towers that are built around the lake. You can see they have 2 wooden spires. There's an HBHF sensor on them that triggers when you fly through it and sends a signal back here to tell the sort of master control that you've flown through. And then as you complete this sort of figure 8 course, once you get through the 10th gate, your time is stopped and recorded. I can show you the map view here. We've put a vending machine in each of them to lay out the course, so I'm standing here at the start. You go through gate 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's kind of a counterclockwise figure 8. 7, 8, 9, and come back through the other side of the double gate, which is 10, and that's the finish of the course. Right there. It was intended for minicopters, but we found that some people enjoy doing this in the Chinook also, so we've added the Chinook to the leaderboard here. Also have a binocular loaner machine. You can see all the gates from the pad out here, not quite from the gallery, but you do have some binoculars. You can kind of watch people running the whole race. I'll probably include a few bloopers here at the end of this video, so you can see some of the shenanigans we've had actually testing this thing. It's actually very simple. This timer here activates a reset circuit. That reset circuit resets all the circuitry inside and this timer. This is just a variation of the basic Rusty clock. I've got a video on how to do that, and you can watch that to see how to do this. Passing through the first gate starts the timer, and then a series of memory cells here are what cause it to keep track of all 10 gates as you go through. And when you pass the 10th timer, it activates a blocker that stops this timer so you can see what your finished time is. Alright, so here we are inside the brains of the operation. This looks intimidating, but it's actually fairly simple. There's a lot of circuits here used to control the response from the transmitters in each of the gates. And then we got power supplies over here. All the power on the roof comes down to this splitter and is broken into 2 circuits. Each circuit has its own little UPS circuitry and its own battery, which is enough to run both sides. This circuit over here needs about 70 units to run, and this side needs almost 80 units to run. So that fits within the capacity of the 100 unit output of each of these batteries, so that's why I use 2 circuits. The circuit to the left is used for the timer on the wall outside, as well as the lighting and the reset circuitry, which goes around the top of the wall here. I'll show you more of that. And then this side, I'll use to show you some more detail here. This runs the master circuit for triggering, comes along the wall here, branches off, and is used to power these 10 RF receivers. These represent gates 1 through 10, and they're each on a different frequency. I've set them up on some temporary frequencies to demonstrate with this transmitter what happens as people fly through the gate. So when someone flies through gate 1, it triggers this receiver, which hits that memory cell, which provides power to the next memory cell, and it sends power over here through this AND switch and triggers the toggle on the Rusty clock. If you don't know how the Rusty clock works, I have another video on that, so go check that out. This is a slight variation that uses an AND for the triggering input and a blocker to stop the input so that I can stop the clock and start the clock with the first memory cell. So go check out the Rusty clock video and you'll understand how this little feedback loop works here. It's started by memory cell 1, and the blocker is linked to memory cell 10, so that's what stops the clock when you go through gate 10. The rest in between here are just in sequence, so I can simulate this by just changing my frequency up. That would be gate 2. That would be gate 3, gate 4, gate 5, gate 6. Sorry, I gotta type each of these in. 7, 8, 9, and ultimately 10. Before I hit this button, I'll show you blue lights out here say the race has started. You can see that 9 of the 10 siren lights up there show that I've gone through 10 gates. You can see the clock is running here. And then when you hit gate 10, boom, it sets off the red lights on the pad to tell the person they've successfully finished. You can see the clock has stopped, and all 10 status lights up here are illuminated. And you can see now the clock has stopped because the 10th memory cell has powered up the blocker to stop the feedback loop and thus stop the clock. Alright, there's some more circuitry that goes with these memory cells. You'll notice that they're not wired directly into each other. The RF receivers rather are wired into the set as you'd expect to turn these on. But I do have a branch on the output of all of them. The first one because I needed some power to start the clock over there, as well as pass the rest to the next guy. And then I have a branch on the rest of them because I needed a tap to run that status light up in the gallery, those red lights. So this is just 2 units of power to go up and run each of those status lights. That's all these branches do. Otherwise, if you didn't have a row of status lights, you could just link one memory cell to the next. And that's the same all the way down here to the last one, where this branch powers the lights for finish and the blocker to stop the clock. And then the reset circuit that comes around the room here runs across the top, and each of these branches is then wired down into the reset on the memory cells, so that when you hit that timer outside, it not only resets the 2 displays to 0, but it resets all of these memory cells back to off, so that the course is ready to run again. So that turns off all those status lights, turns all these memory cells back to off, so they're all waiting to be triggered by the gates again. And yeah, that's pretty much it. It's not really complicated circuit. There's just a bunch of it because I thought 10 gates would be fun. Just turned out to be a lot of wiring. There are a couple other reset components going on over here. Because we have these 2 displays out here, display 1 needs to trigger display 2 here, the minute counter, to go up every time it hits 60 and reset itself to 0. But the reset circuit also needs to reset these to 0. So I had to use an AND switch on that seconds timer so that it could be reset either by itself or the reset circuitry here. You can see the reset circuit just comes in, goes through the wall to the timer switch outside, which is the reset, and then goes back up. This resets the displays. Rest of the power goes down to reset the memory cells. Just that easy. I am tapping off some of the power of this circuit before the reset to go down through these AND switches, and those are used to power all the lights that are outside on the pad. Because there's a bunch of them, and I only have 1 or 2 units technically coming off of the first and last memory cell, I needed to bump up the power. So those 2 units come in here as half of the AND equation, and then the power I actually need to run all the lights goes into the other half because it passes through the higher value. So we're sending out 9 units here and 6 units here. This is the blue lights on the pad that indicate someone has started, and those are the red lights on the pad indicating that someone has finished. And by the pad, I mean out there. The status lights on the roof are run by the branches over there. So yeah, UPS circuit, if you don't know how to make this, I have a video on that. Rusty clock, if you don't know how to make this, I have a video on how to do that, although this is a slight variation to allow dual triggering. And then, as I've already explained, here's how all the RF receivers work. Some decent times up here. I certainly welcome you to come on to Rusty Haven PVE and give this a shot before the wipe. That happens at the end of the month, so you still have time, hopefully, when this video is published, to go try it for yourself. And before I finish up, I want to take you over to one of the gates and show you how the electronics in the gates actually work, because that's actually kind of cool and maybe even more complicated than this. So I'll have to do a quick edit here and reappear over in one of those gates. Alright, here we are at gate number 1. This is as good example as any, so I'm just going to go through how this was built. You'll see that it's a 4-story tall tower on both sides. The original version of this was 3 wide. Found that to be a little bit narrow for flying through, so widened it to 4. Originally, the HBHF sensor was over in that alcove to try and prevent cheating and force people to fly through the gate by limiting its view in front and behind the gate. But we actually found that was too limiting, and when you flew through this gate at high speed, it didn't actually pick you up long enough to trigger. So we had to put it back on the wall here, which makes it sense you approaching the gate and going away, which allows it to trigger long enough to actually send a signal back over to the base. So it does make it possible to cheat, kind of, by flying just in front of or behind the gate. But since most of these gates change axes, it doesn't really help that much to cheat by just flying past the gate instead of through it. So possible cheat, but doesn't really help you. On this side of the tower, we have the windmill or wind turbine. On the other tower, I've got some solar just as a backup, and I left the cable suspended between them just as a fun visual effect. We got a couple blue flashers on each side and a couple red sirens on each side. And I also found that when you're flying through the gates fast, you don't actually see the lights because you're going through it too fast. So I added an audible alarm over there so that you could hear that you had triggered the gate. And also, let's take you inside and show you how this works. So all that power comes down here to this little UPS. Now it looks like somebody's trying to fly the course, maybe? So all this power comes down here to the UPS, and then I'm sending 30 units out into this branch. The branch sends the power to HBHF sensor, and the HBHF sensor comes back to start this timer. Originally I was just using an AND switch here, but that was also time limiting, so I put a timer on here so that the lights and siren and transmitter would run for 10 seconds, just to make sure it was clear that you had gone through the gate, and to make sure that I triggered the receiver back at the base. If it's only activated while you're flying through, you barely hear the siren and lights, so the timer actually worked out better, and it was a little easier to wire. So assuming you've flown through here and triggered the HBHF sensor, it starts the timer, and for 10 seconds it puts power through. This branch is to the transmitter, back to the base, and these two then are for the 2 sets of lights on either side, plus the alarm on the other side is tied into the lighting circuit. So again, not particularly complicated. If you don't know how to do UPS circuit, go look up my video on that. The rest of this is pretty easy. So just a branch to run the HBHF. HBHF comes back to trigger the timer. Timer powers the transmitter and the lights. It's just that easy. The real work in this project was actually building all 10 of these towers and wiring all of them. Because I don't have no clip, so I couldn't fly around the map. We had to walk from each tower to the next, building a whole set of scaffolding, all the wiring, and then, of course, anytime something wasn't working, takes a good 20 minutes to walk around through all these towers and edit them and check them. So a lot of thanks to Problematic, Biggie, Diesel, Raunchy, everybody who helped out with the materials and the time to go through and build this. And it's probably about all I want to say for now, because it looks like somebody wants to run the course, so I'm just gonna get out of the way here. And I'm going to continue this video by editing in a run of the course in the Minicopter, which I'll film either myself or with somebody else, and then have some blooper reel and some runs of some people trying it out that I'll tack on to the end here too, because it's kind of fun to watch. So again, if it is still March 2019, get on to Rusty Haven PVE and try your luck. See if you can post a good time. If it's past that, then hopefully there's enough information here for you to try a course of your own. Now, of course, no Minicopter race course demonstration video would be complete without a full run through the course to show you what it looks like when it is completed successfully. But obviously, on this particular day, I was not the person to do that demonstration. Thankfully on this server, minicopters don't take damage, so as you can see, both I and Problematic had a number of challenges trying to complete the course. However, that does of course give you quite a bit of good material like floating pumpkins for blooper reel material. Some people fortunately didn't even make it to the course without crashing, and some people we didn't even let get all the way to the course. So ultimately we had to call in our resident minicopter expert, Mr. Bigysmally, to show us all how it was done, getting a record time on his very first attempt. So I will leave you with that. Good luck, and don't suck.